He says that the story that I'm telling him what happened isn't plausible. Aaden would have had to have been knocked unconscious for that to be
Wasn't knocked
plausible.
unconscious. You can ask Chris. Chris was there, heard him crying. He wasn't unconscious. He was screaming.
In April 2010, police were called out to 6614 Pinewood Drive in Palm Bay, Florida, at approximately 2 a.m. in reference to a possible child investigation. The 2-year-old victim was Aaden Batista. He was brought to the regional hospital in an unresponsive state. His babysitter was Jason Padgett, who was the boyfriend of Aaden's mother, Whitney. Jason is the main culprit in this story. I have no images of Whitney. Now I'm going to tell you this story in a slightly different style. Ordinarily, I'd be showing you the crime scene photos, etc. But this time, I'm just going to tell you this gruesome, disgusting story. I also have Jason's police interview, which will be posted on my other channel. It's one of the worst police interviews you'll ever see in terms of the details. So stay tuned for that. I'll put it in the description when that video goes live. Aaden was eventually transported to Arnold Palmer Hospital in Orlando. The boy was in a critical condition. Jason, at the time, told police he was babysitting Aaden. He told them that Aaden is not his biological son, but that he treats him as if he was his biological son. That's actually bullshit, as I'm about to tell you. He was babysitting Aaden because his mother was working at the hospital. Jason said that sometime around 7 p.m., he let Aaden go to a neighboring apartment to play for about 30 minutes. His neighbor, her name was Lauren, she was 13 years old, she was playing with Aaden. While Aaden was with Lauren, Jason and his friend Chris were playing Xbox in Jason's apartment. I think his friend Chris lived in the apartment upstairs and Jason was in the apartment downstairs. Kind of like a townhouse condo style arrangement, I think anyway. So at approximately 8 p.m, Jason said that he received a call from his fiancée Whitney. She reminded him, don't forget, give Aaden a bath. After speaking with Whitney, he went to the neighbor's apartment and got Aaden. Police asked Jason if he observed any marks or cuts or redness anywhere on Aaden's body while he was giving him a bath, and Jason replied, no. He told them that Aaden was acting normal and that Aaden returned absolutely fine from the neighbor's apartment. He then took the boy into the bathroom and gave him a bath. After giving him a bath, he took him out of the tub and stood him on the covered toilet next to the tub and sink. He dried Aaden off with a towel and then went to the sink and got Aaden's toothbrush. He brushed Aaden's teeth while he was still standing on the closed toilet seat. But when he turned to the sink to rinse off Aaden's toothbrush, he heard a loud bang, and when he turned his head, he observed that Aaden had fallen off the toilet. He said that he didn't see Aaden fall, but as soon as he heard it, he immediately went to pick the boy up off the floor. Because of this, Aaden was screaming and crying after he had fallen. I mean, he was 1 year old, so it was gonna hurt. But after a few minutes, Aaden stopped crying and told Jason that he was okay. So after, Jason picked him up and brought him into the living room. He gave Aaden his bottle of apple juice and then put him to bed. The boy went to bed around 9 p.m. He went back out to the living room and continued to play Xbox with his friend Chris. Jason then walked police to the bathroom and reenacted how the incident occurred. Upon entering the bathroom, Jason immediately pointed out 2 wet marks on the top of the toilet seat cover. The 2 marks were footprints, and he was trying to claim, look, see, I'm telling you the truth. He then demonstrated how he had the victim standing on the toilet. He stated that Aaden walked out of the bathroom under his own power. Aaden walked into the living room and then sat on the couch for a while until Jason observed him dozing off. Police asked Jason if Aaden had ever fallen before. He said of course he falls all the time. He had fallen off the toilet before 2 or 3 times over the past few weeks. He said that it was weird because Aaden never had gotten injured any other time that he fell off the toilet. Then around 11 p.m, Jason said that Whitney got home from work. When she got home, Whitney went into Aaden's bedroom to check on him, and while Whitney was in the bedroom checking on him, Jason remained in the room playing Xbox. He heard Whitney yelling for him, saying that Aaden was unresponsive. Police asked Jason if he knew if the baby was breathing. He said that Aaden was breathing but he was not responsive. He and Whitney then drove him to the ER. He did say that in the car, Aaden coughed once, but there was no other movement. Jason believed on the way to the ER, the boy was dead. Police did ask him at what point he became concerned about Aaden's well-being. Jason replied that he wasn't worried because Aaden wasn't cut or bleeding. He said at no time did he ever become concerned that Aaden may need medical attention prior to driving to the ER. And that was the end of the initial interview with Jason at his residence. But then, later that day, police ran a criminal history check on Jason. They observed that he had an extensive criminal history, including, but not limited to, child assault, aggravated battery, aggravated assault, battery on LEO, whatever that is, multiple drug and domestic violence related arrests, and they also spoke with the DCF, who said that Jason has an extensive history with them. The DCF told police that there was currently an open neglect investigation involving Jason and Whitney with Aaden. So of course, police thought, hold on a minute, this guy's a piece of work. So at 11 a.m. the next day, police then went to Chris's house to question him. During the interview, Chris told police that he was in and out of Jason's apartment all day. During that time, the two were playing video games and just hung out. Chris did tell police that in the past he has heard Jason get violent and have loud arguments on numerous occasions. He did say that he did hear Aaden crying, but he didn't think much of it. He said he didn't ask Jason why the child was crying because he assumed it was because the child didn't want to go to bed. Then around 9:30 p.m, Jason came up to Chris's apartment to play a video game for around 20 minutes. Police asked Chris if at this moment Aaden was with Jason when he came up to his apartment. He said that Jason put Aaden to bed and then came up to play video games with him, leaving Aaden alone in the apartment. While Jason was at his house, he said that Aaden had fallen and cut his lip and had a bump on his head. Chris did say that when Jason arrived, he was extremely scared and that he was going to be arrested. Jason told Chris that Aaden was dead. Now I don't know the exact laws, but if you leave a 1-year-old home alone, is that a felony or something? I don't know, let me know. Chris didn't understand why Jason was so afraid of being arrested when Aaden accidentally fell. So, after interviewing Chris, police then spoke with Linda Petticone for the Child Advocacy Center in Orange County. She said the following in her report, that it's highly likely that Aaden is a victim of physical assaults. She believed that the history of the child falling from a toilet to a bathtub is not consistent with the severe extent of the injuries that the child was presented with. The child showed multiple intracranial, subdural, and subarachnoid hemorrhages and overlying multiple areas of his brain. In other words, his skull was cracked over and over again, with his brain bleeding. One important thing to consider is that the toilet height is measured as 16 inches, and the length of space from the toilet to the bathtub is 11 inches. It is considered that a simple fall would not result in injuries of this severity, given the lack of space, if that makes sense. Police then spoke with physician Dr. Tillelly. He said upon arrival, the boy's pupils were 3 mm and reactive and he was moving his extremity, but showed leg stiffness. There was significant scalp swelling. This was noted in the occipital region. Bruising was noted at the right maxillary area. His toes were extending upwards bilaterally and the child's legs were extended to painful stimuli. The doctor stated in his report that in his opinion, the child had been assaulted by either shaking or blunt trauma. The child's life was in jeopardy and the doctor believed that Aaden had been mistreated heartlessly and cruelly without regard for safety and welfare. Police then visited the same doctor again. He said that he was just about to pronounce the victim deceased. Then the police spoke with Brevard County Medical Examiner Steve Busey. He advised them that the victim's organs were unable to be harvested due to the fact that it was found Aaden had hepatitis C and that there was evidence of actual assault to the victim's sphincter and bruising to his other side. Wow. He said that the boy had sphincter scuttling. Police then searched the property of Jason. Upon entry, the residents they located blood on a pillowcase on Aaden's bed. They also located blood on his bed linens. When they found his onesie that he was wearing, it had a large amount of blood on the front area and the back. Police processed the bedroom and were unable to locate blood anywhere in the bathroom. They seized a blue towel that was hanging over the shower rod. And that is peculiar. Why is there blood on the bed but no blood in the bathroom where this incident took place? The blue towel I mentioned was the same towel that Jason had dried Aaden off after his bath. Police also found some drug paraphernalia, and a small amount of marijuana was located inside the apartment in a dresser drawer. Police located what appeared to be a foreign dried fluid, possibly saliva, on the wall in the living room. They then conducted a neighborhood canvass to speak with all the surrounding neighbors in the apartment complex. During the interviews, all of the witnesses said that they've seen Jason be extremely violent towards Aaden on numerous occasions, particularly in the past 3 months. The witnesses stated that they've seen Jason injure Aaden in the hand. They said that they've seen Jason open hand injure Aaden in the throat and the back of the head. 2 witnesses described an incident approximately 3 weeks ago, where Jason proceeded to drag Aaden from the playground across the entire parking lot by his shirt. The witnesses reported seeing Jason twist Aaden's ear while he was dragging him. They went on to say that Jason was yelling at Aaden, telling him that he was a worthless piece of shit and that he would never amount to anything. Jason, you moron, how dare you? Witnesses also told police about another incident where Aaden was riding his 3-wheel scooter just outside his front doorway in the walkway. Jason at the time started yelling, "What the F do you think you're doing?" He then proceeded to pull the scooter away from Aaden, and then for some unknown reason, Jason swung the scooter at Aaden. After making contact with Aaden, he ran into the house crying. Witnesses also spoke of an incident where Jason forcibly pulled Aaden's arm across the parking lot. When asking the neighbors about the night of Aaden's assault, the night he died, Jason and a couple of friends were hanging outside the apartment around 7 p.m. and they were smoking marijuana, witnesses said. They told police Jason asked Lauren, the neighbor, to come and play with Aaden for a while. Then around 8 p.m., the neighbor walked Aaden back into his house. Jason then took care of Aaden after that. Around 9 p.m., neighbors observed Jason coming upstairs to Chris's apartment. He was alone. Aaden was not with him. Jason was at Chris's for around 30 minutes. And then around 10 p.m., Jason walked back to his own apartment. The witnesses at the time observed Jason yelling and screaming, and they also heard a baby crying. They heard Jason yelling, "Shut up, be quiet, I told you to go to bed." And then a little while after this, Whitney came home and witnesses heard a loud screaming and panic coming from the downstairs apartment. Witnesses said they heard Whitney yelling, "What did you do to him? How did this happen?" Because of course, she found her child unresponsive. Jason and Whitney then left the apartment with Aaden. This is when they took him to the hospital. A day later, the police interviewed Jason at his house again. It was revealed to the police that when Jason went to Chris's house, he was crying, telling him, "The baby's dead, the baby's dead. Please, Chris, you have to help me, you have to help me." Jason repeatedly told him, "Please tell me, what should I do?" So eventually the police take him into the station and they have a longer interview. And this is the main interview they have with Jason. So you can see for yourself what he says to police. And essentially they get him to confess. Based on all the medical information and statements obtained from attending physicians who treated the child, they all stated that the injuries that Aaden received are not from this fall off the toilet. He sustained multiple blunt force trauma to the back of his head and to the front of his head. The medical examiner reported that Aaden had severe blunt force trauma. The medical examiner compared the force to be equivalent to someone striking the windshield in a motor vehicle accident. He explained that these injuries required an enormous amount of force. The medical examiner reported that Aaden would have most likely survived if he received medical attention immediately. In fact, during an audio recorded interview, Jason himself advised police that Aaden's injuries were caused while Aaden was alone in his care sometime later that evening. So, in light of all the medical information, numerous witness statements, blood evidence located at the crime scene with several inconsistent statements on the part of Jason, police requested that an arrest warrant be issued for his arrest. He was charged with felony murder, manslaughter of a child, child neglect, and aggravated child abuse. When the police arrested him, and after being placed in a patrol vehicle, Jason asked police what he was being charged with. They advised him that he was being charged with the murder of Aaden. Now, what he told police at the interview at the police station, I'm not going to get into it now. That's in the interview video. Of course, go check it out. The details are insane. What this man did to that poor boy is nothing short of horrific. Why he did it, etc., is all explained in that video. But during the interview, police told Jason that they spoke with Whitney immediately after they arrested him. Whitney was begging and pleading with police to get to the truth on what happened. Jason then started to break down and cry. After Jason's interview, police met with Whitney. They asked Whitney if she and Jason had any arguments prior to her going to work that day. Whitney said that Jason got angry with her because he felt they never got alone time together without Aaden around. Whitney told police Jason wanted to watch a movie in bed with her. And Whitney told Jason that she was going to bring Aaden into the bedroom so they could all be together. At this moment, Jason got upset that Whitney wanted Aaden to be with them instead of watching the movie alone. Whitney stated that Jason got so mad that he walked out of the bedroom and went to play video games in the living room alone. Her and Aaden laid in bed alone while Jason continued playing his games. Shortly after, Whitney went into work for her 4-hour overtime shift. Police again went back to the medical examiner's office. This time they spoke with the Dr. Quasar. He stated that he wanted to take a closer look at the marks on Aaden, particularly Aaden's sphincter. The doctor stated that the marks on Aaden's privates appeared to be from a pinch or a bite. Wow. The police asked the doctor if it was possible for the bruising to have occurred while Aaden was in the hospital. The doctor told police that the injuries and bruising to the private area was not caused by any medical procedure. So, with all this information, Jason of course was arrested, went to trial, and this silly bastard was sentenced to life in prison. If what Whitney said is true, that he did this because he was jealous of the boy, why can't we get time alone? I don't think he did this because of that one isolated incident. I think this must have been a build-up of other things that were pissing him off. The previous descriptions of him dragging the child, across the park or whatever, shouting at the child in front of everyone. The child not falling asleep on this day was probably the trigger. Cracked skull, marks on his privates. What on earth did he do to this boy? Well, watch the police interview to find out more. Somewhere in Cumbria, in the north of England, an unmarked grave covered with rain-battered teddy bears, tributes and flowers lies the body of Poppy Worthington. She was a 13-month-old baby girl who deserved so much more than her short life afforded her. For many years, the harrowing circumstances of her death were hidden. The little girl with the gappy baby-toothed smile was subjected to a horrific assault by her father, Paul Worthington, that led to her death in December 2012. Now stay tuned till the end where I give my take on why this happened. The specific cause of Poppy's death remains uncertain, but is believed to have been suffocation or cardiac arrest as a result of an assault. Today, Mr. Worthington, who is a 48-year-old supermarket worker, believed to have committed the most monstrous of crimes, remains a free man. He is now said to have gone into hiding. There was hope for Poppy's grieving family when the Crown Prosecution Service said it was reviewing its decision not to press charges. There is to be a fresh inquest and a date is to be determined. Meanwhile, little Poppy sleeps on. This is her story, and it raises profound and disturbing questions about the role of police and social services and the cloak of secrecy that has concerned their fatal mistakes until now. Poppy's mother said her relationship with Paul Worthington started about 2009, at which time she already had 3 daughters living with her. She and Paul had a son together, and then twins. And then in October 2011, Poppy was born. This brought the number of children in the household to 6. A few weeks after the birth of the twins, the family moved to a 3-bedroom house, which they rented from Tracy Worthington, who is Paul's sister. The family were living in the house at the time of Poppy's death. The mother's relationship with Paul was on and off. Sometimes he was living in the house, sometimes he was not. They decided in December 2012 there was a plan for the family, including Paul, to move to live in another area in order to make a fresh start. The house consisted of a living room and kitchen downstairs and 3 bedrooms and a bathroom upstairs. There was a bedroom with a double bed, which the mother shared with Paul, although she said she often slept on a sofa downstairs. There were 2 cots in that room in which the 2 boys slept. Poppy slept in a cot in another bedroom, and sometimes one of her sisters slept in that room too. Otherwise, the other girls all slept in the 3rd bedroom. The mother explained that the house was always busy, not only with the 6 children, but also with a regular stream of visiting family and friends. The mother described Poppy as alert and very sociable, very alive, bubbly, funny. Poppy had an uncomplicated birth. She was developmentally normal and had taken her first steps shortly before her death. She was generally in good health. Her health was more robust than that of her twin brother. Her mother had needed to seek medical attention for Poppy on only a few occasions. In February 2012, when she was about 3 months old, she had an overnight admission to hospital because of acute bronchiolitis. A little later, there was a diagnosis of conjunctivitis, and subsequently, Poppy suffered vomiting and diarrhea, and she developed a rash and chickenpox was suspected. On December 11th, 2012, Poppy was a bit snuffly, but otherwise well. Her mother put her into her cot in a box room between 7 and 7:30 p.m. By about 8 p.m., all the children were in bed. Poppy's mother watched television downstairs. At about 9 p.m., Mr. Worthington went upstairs with his laptop and went to bed. He checked out some sports results he gambled on. Then he watched porn, which he told police involved adults, before falling asleep. That's a bit of a red flag. Imagine telling someone you watch porn and you have to confirm it was adults. Well, what the fuck else would it be? At 2 a.m., Poppy's mother, who had not yet been to sleep, went upstairs to fetch the laptop for her own use. Mr. Worthington gave his own version of events that night, which the judge found unconvincing. He claimed he was woken in the early hours by a scream or cry from Poppy. When he went into her room, he says he found her rigid and stiff. He gave her a cuddle and took her into his room and laid her on the bed crossways. He fetched a clean diaper from downstairs but did not change her and got back into bed. After a few minutes, he says he put out his hand and touched Poppy and discovered that she had gone limp. He ran downstairs with her and called out to Poppy's mother to get an ambulance. She called 999 at 5:56 a.m. and an ambulance arrived at 6:05 a.m. The paramedics described Poppy as being very pale, waxy, and obviously not breathing. In the ambulance, the cardiac monitor showed that Poppy's heart was not beating. On the way to the hospital, both the paramedic and Poppy's father tried to revive her. She arrived at 6:11 a.m. Poppy was taken immediately to the resuscitation room. Dr. Bramer was the locum consultant pediatrician, who took the lead in treating Poppy when she arrived at the hospital. He said that on arrival, Poppy had no heart rate, was blue and cold, and was not breathing. Her pupils were fixed and dilated. Poppy was laid on a resuscitation bed, and around 10 different professionals undertook the standard resuscitation procedures for 57 minutes. The doctor stated that the anesthetist tried to intubate unsuccessfully, and then he took over and intubated with a size 4.5mm endotracheal tube. Drugs were given through a venous access and blood samples were taken. He said that Poppy did not produce a detectable heart rate at any stage and basically she was dead before she arrived at the hospital. Now I have a very important statement from the mother which gives away everything, but again, wait till the end. After 57 minutes of effort and speaking to the parents, resuscitation was discontinued and at 7:07 Poppy was pronounced dead. Her body was moved to the children's ward before being taken to the mortuary around midday. At 9:40 am, a crime scene investigator attended and took photographs and a video of the house. At 10:15 am, a female officer named in the report only as Inspector S and later identified as Amanda Sadler attended hospital with a colleague and inspected Poppy's body. They noticed some blood trickling down her leg when her tiny body was moved. Poppy's mother and father were spoken to by police at the hospital. During the course of the morning, Paul was permitted to visit the toilet where he could have washed away any crucial DNA that would have helped being a criminal case against him, and swabs were not taken from him until later in the afternoon. Amid the drama, potentially crucial evidence was lost. The gloves the paramedic who carried Poppy into the ambulance was wearing were thrown away. The stretcher sheet, which had blood and other bodily fluids on it and which might have yielded critical clues, was not preserved. One officer saw a used diaper on the floor near the fireplace in the house. It was believed to be the last diaper worn by Poppy. Her paternal aunt put it in the bin, but it was never retrieved. Other items not preserved for forensic analysis included Poppy's pillow, her clothing, her parents' bedsheet, or any items that might have been used as part of the assault. Even Paul's laptop went missing. The scene at the house was not secured and no reconstruction with the parents took place. Now, you all watch true crime videos, right? Many times in these videos, the police will ransack the house looking for evidence. What I've just told you, how there was no DNA buccal swabs or whatever, they didn't take any of the pillows, the location where she died, is pure incompetence on part of the police. Now, at a meeting held by Cumbria County Council on the day of Poppy's death, a pediatrician with responsibility for safeguarding of children said Poppy suffered from chronic constipation, and this may have accounted for the blood coming from the top of her legs. But this was totally wrong. She did not suffer from constipation. It was accepted as fact at the time and probably had a bearing on many important decisions that followed. But of course, that would be the thinking. They are going to think it's constipation because, of course, there was no other evidence collected, right? Her body was transferred to the Royal Manchester Children's Hospital on December the 14th, and an X-ray revealed 2 broken bones in one of her legs. Mr. Justice Jackson concluded that in the absence of any proper investigation into the injury, its cause could not be determined. Common sense might dictate that this might have given cause for concern about the 5 children, then aged between 13 months and 8, remaining in the care of Mr. Worthington and Poppy's mother. But it was 4 weeks after Poppy's death before they were examined by doctors, although no sign of injury was found. No x-rays were taken. Experts said Poppy's injuries would have caused significant pain that would have been apparent to the parents. Well, of course, if a child has a broken leg, a parent would notice. But both the mother and Paul denied knowing anything about them. 2 pathologists, Dr. Alison Armour and Dr. Stephanie Bittetti, were instructed by the coroner to examine Poppy's body. Because of other commitments, this didn't take place until 5 days after her death. Dr. Armour was deeply concerned to find bruising and tearing, and the next day rang Amanda Sadler to express concerns that Poppy had been subjected to a penetrative act. Wow. Despite the extreme gravity of the charge, another officer, Mike Forrester, would not permit even basic tests to be conducted, refusing to authorize forensic testing of any samples or items seized apart from Poppy's blood. On the 24th of December, Dr. Armour again phoned Sadler to say that she believed Poppy did not die from natural causes, but as a result of an unlawful act. Despite these concerns, Dr. Armour did not complete her report into Poppy's death until 6 months later. 6 months? What were you doing for 6 months? Picking your ass? She explained that in a case of such seriousness, she wanted to have all the laboratory results before making an official finding. Normally, pathologists provide preliminary findings to the coroner. Dr. Bittetti, whose report was not filed until July, but who had filed an interim one in February, found no evidence of death by natural causes, such as a seizure or metabolic disease, in her report either. Poppy's body was released by the coroner and she was buried on February the 19th, 2013. So far, right, despite the lack of evidence they gathered from the house, the doctors, the coroner's office, they felt like this was not natural. Somebody did this to her. Now, in 2013, Michael Scarborough of Forensics was instructed by the police to carry out forensic tests. He found that Poppy's DNA was present on an intimate part of Mr. Worthington's body. This was identified from the swab taken on the afternoon of the day Poppy died, although not to the degree that might have been expected that he had committed an unlawful act, and it was noted that this could have been the result of secondary transfer, in other words, from his hands to his pee-pee during urination. And it was later that they realized that they did take a buccal swab, they just didn't act upon it in this manner. Paul could have washed away incriminating evidence in the hours after Poppy's death. Despite the clear suggestion of a sexual assault, Cumbria Constabulary found to use a pediatrician with specialist knowledge of investigating sexual abuse. Virtually nothing was done to protect Poppy's 3 sisters and 2 brothers after her death. The council simply asked Poppy's grandparents and mother to supervise Mr. Worthington's contact with the children. This continued even after 2013, when Poppy's parents separated for a time and Paul moved out. On August 2nd, social services became aware that Paul had moved back into the family home. A polite letter was written to the family asking that unsupervised contact between father and children should not be permitted. Having considered the various reports, police arrested Paul and Poppy's mother on August 27, 2013 and placed them on bail. The mother was to have no unsupervised contact with the child and the father was to have no contact with the child under 13. They were interviewed and papers relating to the case were sent to the prosecution service. In September, the council became aware the mother was having unsupervised contact with her children. 2 months later, the children were finally removed from the house and put into foster care. Wow, that's so sad. Well, what's that, like 5 kids now gone into foster care? Hopefully they're safe. On March 28, 2014, a 2-week fact-finding hearing was held at the High Court in London, at which all available evidence was heard. Justice Peter Jackson found in his judgment that Poppy died as a result of a penetrative assault inflicted upon by her father and criticized police, social workers, and the coroner. Following Justice Jackson's findings, police officers involved in the case were removed and replaced. The Independent Police Complaints Commission began an investigation. Full details of the circumstances surrounding a death are usually given at an inquest, but at Poppy's inquest, held by coroner Ian Smith on October 21, no details were forthcoming. It took place nearly 3 years after her death, delayed possibly as a result of the police's investigation. But when they finally did have the inquest, it lasted just 7 minutes. On January 14, 2015, Cumbria's new coroner, David Roberts, perhaps dissatisfied by the lack of information at the first one, requested a fresh inquest. Of course, what can you say in 7 minutes? On the instructions of the National Crime Agency, pathologist Dr. Nathaniel Carey examined Poppy's case. In December 2014, he suggested she might have died from a hemorrhage caused by infection. Justice Jackson rejected this theory. There was compelling evidence to support the sexual assault allegation. On January 16, 2015, the CPS said there was insufficient evidence to bring criminal charges. They'd given up on justice for Poppy. And on the 31st of March 2015, Justice Jackson disclosed that Poppy's father, Paul Worthington, who must have been pleased by Dr. Carey's infection theory, had requested another family court fact-finding hearing. Presumably, he must have hoped it could clear his name. 8 months later, on November the 11th, Justice Jackson ordered a new fact-finding hearing to be held in Liverpool that month. It took place over 5 days and substantial cost to the taxpayer. Journalists were allowed, but not the public. Justice Jackson found that Poppy was subjected to sexual assault by her father, which led to her death, and it was made public more than 3 years after her death and 21 months after the report was first drawn up. If you take Poppy, a little girl who died in incomprehensible circumstances, could have got justice. The same inquest also heard Poppy suffocated in the family home, as she slept next to her father in an unsafe sleeping environment. Now, before I give you the statement at the end, which confirms to me what actually happened, right? Let me go over what happened, right? So, the family's home was not secure, and Poppy's last diaper she wore was lost, despite all the presence of the police officer at the house, right? And that would have given them a lot of evidence. Is there any blood on the diaper, etc., etc., right? Furthermore, the senior investigating officer of this case did not visit the home. There was no reconstruction with the parents at home so that their accounts could be understood and investigations focused. There was very little or no forensic medical examination at the time of the death. Swabs were not taken until post-mortem despite delays, meaning forensic analysis can be prejudiced. The initial views of pathologist Dr. Allison, who conducted the post-mortem, were not clearly passed on to the local authority for safeguarding purposes. Neither parents' phones were analyzed. Samples that had been taken were not sent for analysis until after the full post-mortem receipt. No statements were taken from paramedics, nurses, doctors, and families until September 2013. So, this is what I think happened. Let me read this out to you, right? Kelly Grieve, she was a clinical support worker, and she said it was her role to care for the parents while they were at the hospital, right? Now, she met the ambulance, and she saw Paul. He was wearing a t-shirt and jeans. He had his socks and shoes with him, and he put those in the relative's room. At a later stage, when mother and the police officer were also present in the room, the parents spoke to her about what had happened. The next morning, she recorded her notes, and the mother started telling her that all the kids had been sick. And then the dad said to her, right, this is Paul's, I guess you could say, unofficial statement, right? Because this is to a hospital worker and not the police. He said that she woke up in her cot. She was crying. So he put her in bed with him. He tried to give Poppy her pacifier, but she wouldn't have it. When he was asked to clarify whether Paul had said in bed or on the bed, he said it was next to him, so she was in bed with him. The mother also told the worker that Poppy was making a face like she needed a poo. So Paul put his fingers on each side of her diaper to try and see if the nappy was full or if she had already pooped, right? See, just basically trying to help her poop, right? Then he said he went downstairs to get a diaper because he noticed that it started to smell and he figured, okay, she probably has pooped, right? I'm a parent, I've been there. He also said she was still crying when he was going downstairs. Paul told the mother that Poppy was up and finding it hard to poo. He said, I don't know why, but I looked over to Poppy and touched her arm and it was lifeless. So he ran downstairs shouting, Poppy, Poppy. What do you make of this? Let me explain it to you, right? Those were the official statements. Well, I guess unofficial, but let me explain it. So, she needs to poo. He's not sure if she pooped. Maybe she has because he can smell it, right? He runs downstairs, he comes upstairs, and he's like, oh no, she's died. I think what's happened is that either he was trying to sleep or he was on his phone. One or the other. She woke him up, right? He got pissed off. I think he gave her a whack. Yeah, he's half asleep, or again, he's on his phone. Man's gambling and on porn. You know what that can do to the brain, the dirty bastard, right? So I think he was just annoyed, and in a rage, he gave her a whack. And it must have been some whack for her to have broken her leg. Although there was some reports that her leg was broken previously. But then that doesn't make sense because the parents would have known. I mean, when a child breaks their leg, they're in agony, right? So either the parents are so stupid and so bad that they let the child walk around with a broken bone, or he did it then. That's when he ran downstairs, got the diaper, come upstairs, and he realized, oh no, what's happened, right? Like maybe the whack was on her head or something. That's my theory, right? Either way, he's not in jail. Nobody knows where he is right now. And the mother, again, nobody knows where she is. No justice. What a sad, sad story for Poppy. Comment. Tell me what you think.